The US and Europe and their allies have taken more punitive measures against Russia for its decision to recognize the independence of breakaway states in eastern Ukraine and order so called peacemaking troops across the border. On Tuesday, Washington announced sanctions on two large Russian banks associated with the Kremlin and Russian military, a prohibition on U.S. financial institutions from trading Russian sovereign debt, and individual sanctions on members of the Russian government and leadership, freezing any assets located in the U.S. EU countries applied similar complementary sanctions, so too did nations like Australia and Japan. Germany responded by saying it would freeze the ongoing certification process around the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, a 750-mile piece of fossil fuel infrastructure that, once online, is expected to supply Europe with cheap natural gas. If Nord Stream 2 remains offline, it could cost Moscow billions of dollars each year. It's also likely to lead to higher energy prices across Europe. Even in the US, the White House is telling Americans to brace for energy prices to go up. We have yet to see masses of new Russian forces entering eastern Ukraine. Putin clarified on Tuesday he wasn't planning to send soldiers across the border immediately and that it will depend on the situation on the ground. The Russian parliament did greenlight Putin's plans and authorized the use of military force in Ukraine. There are reports of increased fighting and shelling along the front lines in the Donbass. U.S. troops stationed around Europe have been redeployed to Eastern European NATO allies. Situation is growing more dangerous, and not just because of Moscow's decision to escalate, but also because diplomacy appears to be off the table at the moment. A meeting floated between Putin and President Joe Biden for Thursday has been scrapped, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced a planned meeting with his Russian counterpart, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, will not be happening either.
Now that we see the invasion is beginning, and Russia has made clear its wholesale rejection of diplomacy, it does not make sense to go forward with that meeting at this time. I consulted with our allies and partners, all agree. And today I sent Foreign Minister Lavrov a letter informing him of this.
Now, I'm not a career diplomat, but my hunch is that when the fighting starts, the need to meet face to face and talk becomes even more important. But what the hell do I know? Putin continues to insist that a way out of this conflict is for the Ukrainian government to commit to not joining NATO, a commitment Kiev refuses to make, and one that NATO members reject by claiming the alliance has an open door policy, even though it actually doesn't. Putin is also now asking for international recognition that Crimea, seized by Russian troops in 2014, is now part of the Russian Federation. But again, there isn't much dialogue happening right now to counteract the forces of war that are building in the region. Within the U.S., the Republican opposition party is pressuring the Biden administration to do more to counteract Russia, accusing the president of being weak. Republican lawmakers have in the past advocated for stronger responses in Ukraine, from deploying U.S. troops there to even threatening nuclear strikes. If there's one thing this conflict absolutely does not need, it's domestic pressure on the President of the United States to increase hostilities. Speaking of the opposition party here in the U.S., its media outlet, Fox News, saw the crisis in Ukraine as an opportunity to troll the White House over global warming. Here was reporter Peter Doocy at Tuesday's press briefing.
The president said in the spring that Pentagon generals had briefed him that the greatest threat facing America is global warming. Is that still the assessment now that we are facing down a potential cyber war with Russia?
Well, let me first say there is no, we are always prepared for any threat that any outside entity or country poses to the United States that relates to cyber or anything else. There is no current pending threat on as it relates to cyber. In terms of the threats you're touching on, that was a briefing from the military, so I'd point you to them.
And so as far as anybody watching who's seen the coverage, it's very, at times, distressing images of Russian military movements. The number one threat facing the country right now remains global warming.
Yes, that is still correct. I mean, until Putin develops a technology to acidify the oceans and raise sea levels by 3 feet around the world, then yes, climate change remains a greater threat than whatever the hell is going on in the Donbass. The troll game remains strong at Fox News. I'd honestly respect it if the goal wasn't to get us all fucking killed. Over 2,000 people died of COVID yesterday, and although that number is declining, the CDC projects 10,000 deaths a week for the next 4 weeks. Looking at the total deaths chart, we're inching closer to the 1 million marker, even though the reality is we've probably already passed it, and way past it if you include general excess death from lack of hospital capacity. Hospitalizations are declining, but still at a level that puts stress on the healthcare system. Each time we see a dip in COVID infections like this, the government and media declare that we are nearing the end of the pandemic. And then a new variant hits. First Delta, then Omicron. Now, infectious disease experts have their eye on another variant starting to develop. It's a sub-variant of Omicron called BA2. The good news is the World Health Organization determined it does not produce a more severe infection than base Omicron. Also, if you're vaccinated, and especially if you're boosted, your chances of serious illness or death remain significantly lower than those who are unvaccinated. The bad news here is that researchers think it's about 30% more contagious, and it's harder to detect on PCR tests. BA2 has already replaced Omicron as the dominant strand in places like South Africa and Denmark. It's been found across the U.S. A lab in North Carolina just flagged it yesterday. And according to the CDC, BA2 cases are doubling at a rapid rate, now reaching almost 4% of all new infections nationwide. Still, fewer than 2/3 of the population is vaccinated here. While vaccines work extremely well, their effectiveness does wane over time, and only 28% of the country has been boosted. Scientists don't expect BA2 to produce a new wave of infections. More likely, it will extend the current wave, the tail end of this current wave, a little longer. And finally, more and more people need to ask themselves, is my crypto safe? Are my crypto safe? Is my crypto? However you want to phrase it, check to make sure your shit is secure, because it's probably not. About $2 million worth of NFTs were stolen on OpenSea, the largest marketplace for shitty digital art. I say worth $2 million, but they are essentially worthless beyond being a speculative asset. The dumbest sort of speculative asset, and that's saying something for our financialized hellhole economy. Some of the stolen NFTs included, yes, Bored Apes. They were stolen through a phishing scam. So people who claim to be on the cutting edge, the pioneers of Web3, whatever the hell that is, savvy digital investors, yet here they are, falling for the same shit you have to warn your grandparents about who still use AOL. Moving on, a bunch of celebrities have been named in a class action lawsuit for their role in an alleged pump and dump scheme. The litigation centers around the cryptocurrency SafeMoon and allegations that its issuers and insiders were selling their holdings after hyping and heavily promoting the token. Celebs who promoted SafeMoon, who are named in the suit, include Jake Paul, Lil Yachty, Soulja Boy, and Nick Carter. According to the lawsuit, you can basically see how promotion correlates with the price of SafeMoon. You can see the pumps here. Soulja Boy and Carter promoted the token on April 17th, just days before the price skyrocketed on April 20th, 420. Soulja Boy promoted it again on 420. According to the suit, he did not disclose any financial relationships or promotional payments that he received from SafeMoon. Then there was another spike in the price of SafeMoon in May after the company bought advertising space in Times Square, and Jake Paul promoted the coin. The price of SafeMoon tokens has since dropped 80% off its high. This particular scam was happening out in the open to those willing to just pay a little attention. A Bloomberg article published in July noted how SafeMoon was vulnerable to manipulation by its issuers because of rules designed to prevent owners from selling the token. The article even noted how rich dick Dave Portnoy, Barstool Sports CEO, once told his 2.6 million Twitter followers that he bought $40,000 worth of SafeMoon despite suspecting it could be a scam, telling them in May, quote, "If it is a Ponzi, get in on the ground floor."
The answer is SafeMoon. SafeMoon is now in the Dave Portnoy business and vice versa. Why? I don't know fucking why. It could be a Ponzi scheme. I like the word moon because that's where I want to go. So I'm buying SafeMoon. I also like how if any fuckers sell it out there, you get a 10% penalty and disperses 5%. Everyone Ponzi. It's early. If it is a Ponzi, get in on the ground floor.
Portnoy was not named in the suit. Ultimately, this is interesting because crypto is rife with celebrity promotions. Kim Kardashian, Elon Musk, Matt Damon, Tom Brady. Could they be defending their promos in court soon too? Hopefully. Maybe. We will know more as the SafeMoon class action progresses. Hopefully, this will have a chilling effect on shameless celebrities taking real money to promote fake money. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog, plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.